Peter, you can begin.
Thank you, Rick. FeedIn tariffs are a policy mechanism designed to accelerate the investment in renewable energy technologies and to lower the cost of renewable energy technologies, and also to instill confidence in the market, which will enable further investment. Renewable energy and feed-in tariffs really started about 10, 12 years ago in Germany, where they were introduced. Basically, a feed-in tariff, producers of renewable energy are paid a set rate for the electricity they produce. Very important, electricity they produce. Payments are set at a pre-established rate, often higher than market rates, to ensure that developers earn enough profitable returns, and eventually this rate is designed to be decreased over time as the market increases over time. A properly designed feed-in tariff will decrease the amount paid over time, as I just mentioned, while the market grows. So ideally, as the FIT comes down, the market will grow and the cost of production in the market will come down too. As you can see, currently there are over 80 jurisdictions around the world that use feed-in tariffs to supplement and accelerate renewable energy generation. Ever since Germany started this, more and more countries, more and more states, more and more cities, all around the world, the number now is greater than 80. This is from about a year ago, and it's accelerating everywhere. It's by far the most utilized program in the world, and without question, the most cost-effective. As you can see, more than 60% of the jurisdictions that use feed-in tariffs, I think that number is actually higher now, use feed-in tariffs as opposed to renewable portfolio standards or renewable energy standards. What the U.S. needs to do is to design a feed-in tariff for the U.S. This can be a national feed-in tariff with different rates for different areas. California, for example, would need a lower one because they have more sun, but also high energy prices. And other parts of the country would have various ones. It has to be designed properly. This has been done before. There's nothing new involved in this. And it has been proven without exception to accelerate development of solar in Germany, as well as most of the other places that it's being utilized. In some of these other places, it was not properly designed. So as a result, it hasn't worked as well as it has worked in Germany, which, by the way, Germany receives on average approximately 50% of the energy from the sun that the average in the United States. So Germany is a very poor insolation sunlight area, and yet is extremely effective there. What are the key benefits of a feed-in tariff? Number one, and most foremost, it's totally proven. There's no question that it works. Two, a feed-in tariff is independent of taxpayer funds. Therefore, by definition, a feed-in tariff is not a subsidy. There is no new public debt needed to finance such a program. This makes it stable and self-sustaining in any economic or political environment, especially the current one we're in. It provides certainty. Therefore, it encourages private investment. Private investment needs certainty. This gives the investor a 10, 15, or 20-year time frame where the cash flows are certain. This creates jobs, expands manufacturing, and increases private sector R&D, because the private sector people know that the cash flow is there, that it's stable and certain. Therefore, they're willing to make commitments into these particular areas, wherever the feed-in tariffs are, to expand the business in the future and help to lower the costs based upon the plan. Dramatically reduces government bureaucracy and red tape. This is a real serious problem here in the U.S. A feed-in tariff in Germany consists of 1.5 pages to get it started, and it can be done in under a week. In the United States, using various other mechanisms, purchase agreements, and various other subsidies. Keep in mind, a feed-in tariff is not a subsidy. These documents in the U.S. can be 95 to 100 pages long, and as you go through them, you will need an attorney, and you will need a person who's very familiar with this, possibly even an engineer and an accountant. So it is immeasurably more difficult than a feed-in tariff. It enhances national security because it dramatically lessens the country's dependence, in this case Germany, on foreign oil, while also decreasing the massive outward-going cash flow to pay for the oil they're using. So all in all, the FIT is a benefit in every one of these areas, and actually more. Who's opposed to FITs? Who would be opposed to something this? Well, basically, all the opposition consists of talk, supposition, and opinion. FITs are fact. There's no question about it. They work, and they're proven. As you might suspect, the number one opponent of FITs is the local electric utility. They're the competitor. One of the arguments you'll read about and hear about is that we need to do everything in the market. We need the market powers to move things. Well, that's kind of silly in the case of a FIT, considering the opponents are electrical utilities that are monopolies. Monopolies don't work with the market. They are monopolies by definition. When you have a monopoly, you don't have market forces. So that's a silly and groundless argument. In actuality, a FIT is far more market-oriented than a monopoly. In addition, you have your other contributors and other competitors, fossil fuel companies, other utilities, and political groups who don't want this infringed on their business. And they don't want to help kickstart an industry that will compete against them. However, in my opinion, there is no economically viable or valid opposition to a FIT if you're looking at all the costs and you're also looking at the welfare of the country and the long-term health of the planet. Why are FITs working in Germany but not in the U.S.? The primary reason FITs are working in Germany and not in the U.S. is basically the respective mindsets in each country. The Germans look at the problem, focus on it, gather all the data, and determine which is the best way to fix it. Here's a quote from the former German minister of a state in Germany. We decided we will reduce CO2 until 2020, 40%, and by 2050, by 80%. We then debated the various instruments that could make this possible, and we decided on feed-in tariffs. I hear these same arguments spoken in 2009. We discussed in Germany 10 or 15 years ago. It's the same debate. In Germany, we made a decision. We made a law, the Renewable Energy Resource Act, feed-in tariffs. It has worked, and you can see the results. The Germans made a decision to the benefit of all their citizens and followed through with it. As we all know, our Congress cannot make a decision. which is a problem. The U.S. has not been able to make this kind of decision, despite the fact that every president since Richard Nixon has recognized the country's unsustainable energy path and has vowed to move toward less dependence on oil. A lot of promises, a lot of words, very little action. In fact, since Nixon, our country's dependence on foreign oil has doubled. Hasn't decreased, it's doubled. Other countries look at the problem, look at the instruments, and pick the ones that are going to work, especially the proven ones like FeedIn tariffs. America has taken a reactive stance in terms of energy. This is not appropriate, in my opinion, at this time because of the catastrophic trajectory of energy consumption demands. We have a proven proactive solution, FeedIn tariffs. They are not theories. They've been proven in a developed country such as Germany, comparable to the United States. Given all the benefits, there is no economically valid opposition to FITs. The U.S. can learn from the FIT in Germany, a country that was quick to recognize the transparency and effectiveness of a FeedIn tariff. They implemented it. They've been doing it for 12 years, and it has been proven to work. As a matter of fact, the recent decrease in FIT compensation in Germany in 2012 is actually higher than the current retail rate in Germany. So in effect, the FIT has accomplished its proven and planned approach in Germany. Another thing that's interesting was that in 2006, China avoided implementing a feed-in tariff. In their statement, the energy official stated that FITs would trigger too rapid a market growth, or maybe he meant would work too well. However, in 2011, the Chinese just implemented a feed-in tariff program, and most of the listeners probably realize they have a tremendous glut of inventory. With a properly implemented feed-in tariff, they will be able to eat through that inventory and use those panels domestically, thereby reducing their need for additional coal plants, additional nuclear plants, decreasing CO2 emissions, all positive things. So they finally scaled up their manufacturing to the point where they can address this huge market with their own product without necessarily exporting and use it all internally. So that's basically a summary of the feed-in tariff, how it has worked, and what we should do to use it in the U.S. If there's any questions, I would be happy to entertain them. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Peter. And again, you can enter questions into the Q&A box in the lower right corner of your screen. I have several that I came up with while reading the white paper, and again, I encourage everybody that's interested in this topic to read Peter's white paper. The link is already published in the Q&A field. It's www.principalsolarinstitute.org/documents is where his white paper is. And while more questions are coming in, I'll start off with Cynthia's comment that until planes and cars and homes are all run exclusively on electricity, changing the power supply to renewables doesn't do much to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Although I support FITs, this isn't a valid argument for foreign oil dependency. Peter?
Well, Cynthia is correct in that the primary competitor for generating electricity in the United States is not oil. It's generated by natural gas and by nuclear. However, in other countries, that is not the case. There are many other countries that use oil as their primary electricity generator. Feed-in tariffs can be used to dramatically increase the size of the renewable energy industry. By doing so, it would accelerate what Cynthia spoke of, and that is getting transportation onto electricity, and also allowing more natural gas for use in the transportation area, which she points out correctly, would have the largest impact on the use of oil. So she's correct in her statement, but accelerating renewables helps in all ways, and it shortens the time until we're at the point where everything is powered by electricity.
Yeah, and I would also make the comment that T. Boone Pickens is going around promoting his natural gas-powered America plan. And one thing I found interesting there was that if you shift a lot of the need of gas from electricity production, domestic natural gas becomes available in Mr. Pickens' plan. It was available for the trucking industry. He said in about 5 years you could switch from diesel fuel to natural gas and eliminate about 10% of the oil consumption in America without really affecting average consumers' cars. I thought that was an interesting proposition from him. Next question, Peter, was from Richard. So where does the money come from to pay the FIT to the solar energy producer?
The first place it doesn't come from is from the taxpayer. It comes from the local utility. It's basically an agreement. A feed-in tariff is an agreement between the generator of electricity, meaning you or me or business, and the local utility. And that's prorated across all users. Now, there's been some arguments, and I've seen some somewhat comical articles how the German people are suffering as a result of the higher rate that it's imposed on the utility shareholders by increased cost of FIT. Well, first of all, in 2012, the German minister said that the average cost of a FIT in Germany is approximately $3.50 a month extra. That's for a whole family. So you're talking about a family is suffering as a result of not buying one cappuccino a month. These numbers are very small, but they have caused a tremendous increase across all of Germany. And in fact, as they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more solar is being utilized, we're finding that because of its effect on peak rates, that the actual cost to the consumer is dropping and is cheaper with the FIT in place than it was without the FIT in place.
And a follow-up question to that from Gloria, speaking again about Germany. So you cited Germany as a success, but there have been issues recently for developers with modifications to European FITs. And how do you see the U.S. avoiding similar issues? Question would be, from my own experience, why did the Spanish government cut back on theirs, and why is Germany cutting back now, as well as some other European countries that are unilaterally adjusting their FITs and causing havoc?
Gloria, that's a very good point. If you recall back in the presentation, a FIT has to be properly designed. That may sound obvious, but I mean, it's the same thing. If you build a house and it's not properly designed, when some heavy weather comes or some other problems come, it could collapse because it wasn't properly designed. Properly designed means step one is not to have it based on tax holder money. The taxpayer should not be supplementing this. That's a subsidy. Okay? So what happened in Spain, for example, is that part of it was properly designed, and another part of it was based on taxpayer revenues. And as a result, as the housing crisis accelerated in Spain and the economy started to collapse, the politicians, since they have access to this now because it has to do with taxpayer money, cut back and eliminated it, even though it was less than 1/10 of 1% of their problem. So the fact that it wasn't designed properly is what caused it not to work in various places. Now, even Germany is cutting back on their FIT payments. That's not a bad thing. The reason they're cutting back is because it's working exactly the way they designed it. Remember again, it's designed to go down at a planned rate, which can be modified based on market conditions. And as it drops, the market grows, increases, and as markets increase, more solar panels are produced, the price goes down. So the plan is to drop the cost of the FIT as the cost of the panels and the other parts of the components of the system drop also. So in Germany, the price is dropping, the FIT is dropping, because it's working great. The price of systems is going down, and the FIT is going down. So it's working perfectly. As a matter of fact, I may have mentioned this earlier, but the average retail cost of electricity in Germany in 2012 is higher than the most recent FIT. So not only is it working perfectly, it's accomplished exactly what it was designed for.
Okay, thank you. And again, as we're answering these questions, if you have your own question for Peter, you can type those into the Q&A box and send to all panelists. That's it. The Q&A box is in the lower right corner of your screen. The next question is from Richard. Is there any legislation being drafted in Texas for FITs?
I'm not really familiar, Richard, with Texas, even though I once lived there and worked there. But I am not aware if there are any. There might be something in the wind area specifically for wind, but I'm not sure. I mean, there's some in Texas, some in Florida, Vermont, California, but I'm not aware of any in Texas.
Okay, and I have a little bit of information for Richard. On Wednesday, November 14th, the Principal Solar Institute, our next webinar at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time, is actually a preview of TRIA. That's the Texas Renewable Energy Industries Association. It's a preview of TRIA policy in the 2013 Texas State Legislature session. As you know, Texas's legislature meets every other year, and that's coming up this spring. And so TRIA and their director, Russell Smith, are the primary proponents for solar and renewable energy policy. Again, everything in Texas is going to be very market-based, but he'll be able to answer that question and give us a preview of what's coming up in the spring. A follow-up question for you, Peter, is would it be better in the United States for states to do FITs state by state versus a nationwide FIT? Why or why not?
Well, you have to remember that there's, I don't know exactly in Germany, but I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 major utilities. So obviously there's a heck of a lot more centralization in Germany than in the U.S. As a result, I would think that the easiest way to do it would be state by state or region by region, because the weather is very different in California than it is in Minnesota, for example. So consequently, the rate of the FIT might be lower in California, so they would want to set it appropriately. And then, of course, you could put techniques in there where you could lower it or raise it depending on how it was reacting. If it's very well designed, it's designed to also be flexible. And keep in mind that the determination of whether solar is good somewhere is based upon the amount of sunlight, but also on the price of electricity. So counterintuitively, the third best place to have solar in the United States is New York. Not that it has the most sun, but it has very high energy prices. So the combination of okay sun, better than Germany, for example, and high prices makes it the third most cost-effective place to have solar, with California, Arizona, Hawaii being, right up there in the top couple too.
Yeah, that is counterintuitive. The next question from Richard again. How does Austin's municipal utility, they have a value of solar tariff? It's a VOST, the value of solar concept. How does that compare to a feed-in tariff?
It's similar. I have not studied that, Richard, but I actually just read about that, and it's an attempt to what I would for what I would call, a lot of people now are talking about smart feed-in tariffs, and I would classify that as a smart feed-in tariff, which is another way of saying well-designed with more flexibility. So what they're trying to do is figure out ways to make it responsive and thereby more flexible. But the key here with the German feed-in tariff is simplicity. I mean, it is so simple, it's mind-boggling. 1.5 pages is the entire contract. And it basically says, once I get this up and running, everything I produce, you will buy for this price for the next 20 years. That's it. No inspections, none of this other stuff. It's all totally transparent and could not be simpler. We have to change a lot of the stuff here in the U.S. because the average cost of solar installed in Germany is about $2.40, $2.50. In the United States, it's over $6. If you look at the breakdowns as to what makes the difference between the $2.40 and the $6, all of the difference is stuff like permits, customer acquisition, all soft costs that can easily be eliminated by a flexible, well-thought-out plan that's responsive to changes, thereby making it flexible and simple.
Yeah, and I can agree with the simple issue. Our experience at Principal Solar buying plants, and I know that you see this, is that in America, we have to deal with trying to analyze the value of SRECs. Can the certificates be sold? What's the market going to change in the future? Can I get a deduction through accelerated depreciation? How much does that value me based on tax rates? I've got to read through a 40-page PPA document to know what all the ins and outs of that are. It definitely is something that an average roof installer who should be doing solar could not begin to tackle, and that definitely hurts America. I agree there. Those numbers that you quoted for $6 a watt and $2.40 a watt, were you primarily just talking about smaller residential installations in Germany?
I was discussing retail, yes.
Okay.
Retail. In Germany, the larger jobs are, below $2. Even in the U.S., they're getting down to that level. But, your comment, Rick, about the PPAs, it is so complex, and literally you need a team to analyze it. In Germany, the husband and wife could sit at the dinner table and make the decision in 5 minutes, make the phone call. The system will be on the house in 3 days.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And people can't say it can't be done here. Of course it can. It's being done somewhere else. So it can be done here. It's a matter of will, not feasibility.
And the next question from Gloria, and these are great. We have several questions coming in, so again, ask your questions in the Q&A in the lower right. So Gloria asks, given the issues in Congress that you described, what are the chances of a nationwide FIT being adopted in the next Congress, so in the next 2 years?
So do I have to bet money on this? If I have to bet money,
or odds.
I say no. I hope it happens. But given the fact that our Congress, which may or may not be composed of our leaders, has an approval of below 10%, I would equate the probabilities of doing a thoughtful, obvious legislation at the same percentage as their ratings, 10%.
Okay, and a follow-up to that then is, so if it can't happen at the national level, what would a FIT look like at a state level specifically, like maybe New York, for example? How much would the payment be? How does that compare to the retail cost of electricity? How much would it decrease each year in caps and so on? Could you provide some number, just guesstimates around that?
Let's just take California since it's easier and it's a bigger state.
Okay.
In Germany, it started out about 10 years ago at 60 cents at feed-in tariff, and now it's 19 cents and the retail rate for electricity is 22 cents. So it's obviously done exactly what it was designed to do. In California, you probably have a rate out there that can go as high as 40 cents in peak. So I would think a feed-in tariff would be somewhere in the high 20-cent range, and I think it would decrease over time, over a 5 to 10-year period, to the point where it was well below the retail rate. Keep in mind that when Germany calculates the benefit, the cost-benefit of the FIT, it also takes into account other factors that we do not take into account. To give you an example, in 2008, Germany, the Department of Energy, said they spent 3.2 billion additional euros to support their FIT. Now, the German Federal Ministry of Environment calculated what was the payback. What did they get in return for the 3.2 billion? Well, according to them, they reduced amounts of fossil and nuclear fuels purchased by 7.8 billion, and they saved 9.2 billion euros from avoidance of external costs. The Germans take into account external costs, national security, health, environment. All those type of things have a real serious cost that is not calculated here. So they had, according to them, a $17 billion return with a $3.2 billion investment in 1 year. That's a tremendous return by any standard.
You could probably package that up on Wall Street and sell that pretty quickly.
You could sell a third of that on Wall Street in a heartbeat.
And we have another question from Alex with some information on California. Just a note that California utilities pay 10 cents per kilowatt hour through their FeedIn tariff program now. At that rate, our company is able to fund and develop 100 small solar farms. This is in the range of 500 kilowatts to 3 megawatts. So that's a comment from Alex. And Alex, we would definitely like to be in touch with you at Principal Solar to learn more about the specifics of those farms that you're developing.
Yeah, thank you for that input, Alex. That's interesting. It's a lot lower than I thought it would have been, but if it works for 10 cents, then it's even better.
And for those that there were some questions about the value of solar tariff concept that we were talking about. For those of you that don't know about that program, it's from Austin Energy, and there's actually a blog post on principalsolarinstitute.org on that homepage at the bottom talking about Austin Energy's, the municipal utility in Austin that has this value of solar tariff. And one thing that you had said, Peter, that that was interesting is Austin, the city, also valued some additional benefits other than just their strict costs, such as the cost avoidance of fuel, cost avoidance of peak pricing. One of those was the environmental benefits of CO2 reduction. And the only argument at Austin was that number became hard to quantify in somewhat of a magical number. But the rest of the numbers people thought were really solid. Next question that we had are how are FITs different from renewable energy standards and renewable portfolio standards, which are common in many states today?
Well, basically, the real difference is, first of all, is that they're very simple. FITs are extremely simple, number one, and transparent. Number two, FIT revenue is certain over a period of time. As even you mentioned earlier, Rick, that when you start looking at PPAs and you start looking at SRECs and how many years out and can it change, there's not as much certainty. So simplicity and transparency, certainty, and they're a lot cheaper. As an example of that, in the wind area, because this is a really good question, Germany has an FIT for wind, so does England, so does Belgium, and so does Italy. However, the German is designed better, and I'm sorry, the English, Belgium, and Italian don't use FITs. They use other mechanisms. Now, what's interesting is that the cost of wind in Germany as a result of the FIT is 8.9 cents a kilowatt hour. In England, which has far better wind resources, not using a FIT, their cost is 11 cents a kilowatt hour, so 2.1 cents higher. In Belgium and Italy, both of which have better wind than Germany, their rate is 14 cents. So, to sum it up, simple, certainty of revenue streams, and cheaper.
And effective. It works, sounds like.
And it's proven.
Proven. Next question was, in your opinion, where do you think the biggest opposition to a FIT comes from in the United States?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, this is not surprising. It's all the people that are going to be hurt by solar happening. So that means all the status quo, all the people that are in fossil fuels or utilities. Utilities are monopolies. They're not used to being challenged. They're set in their ways. And they're going to fight to keep what they've had for years because it's been so easy, because they're a monopoly. What this reminds me of, and I was thinking about this before and actually talking to Rick about it, is that this thing has happened once before with a company called Kodak. They dominated photography through film. Along comes a digital camera, which they invented, and they fought and dug their heels in to protect their legacy, which was the past, and dramatically ignored moving forward with the future, which they themselves invented. And we all know what happened to Kodak. Their stock went from 100 to basically 0. The utilities are going to have the same problem, whether they like it or not. And what they need to do is they need to wake up and realize that they're in the energy business, not in the old boy utility business. They have to get with the program and move to the future. If they don't, they're going to be left in the past.
And so Kodak's a classic business story. Another one is IBM on the positive side, a company that was able to leave behind their PC and hardware side and adopt the future. So my question to that is, are there any forward-looking utilities that you can think of that you think are embracing this vision of the future and helping to drive things forward?
Well, the most innovative guys over the years have been SMUD. That's the Sacramento Municipal Utility Development. And they've been really actively involved in solar back into the 80s. And they're also actively involved in sustainability, designing proper homes that use far less power, electricity, heat, etc. They're probably the most innovative. There are some other ones. There's some in Oregon, actually Texas, Florida, with the wind business. I think the largest, Florida Power and Light, is the largest wind operator in the country. There's other ones that are in Vermont, for example, another innovative one. But the majority are still just going to dig in and fight. And it's a losing strategy, but little by little they're going to lose, or the smart ones will wake up and participate in the future, and the other ones will just get left behind.
And we see in Texas, San Antonio and Austin, it seems to be the municipal utilities where a lot of the ones you mentioned, people that have not shareholders but citizens who are their customers. And I agree with you. It seems like the shareholder-driven utilities are fighting for past profit margins instead of future. We have several more questions actually that came in, and we only have 3 more minutes. So the next one was from Trey. How has the paring back reduction in statutory FIT rates in Europe, how has that affected new development of large wind and solar? Are you seeing that slow down in Germany?
Well, it's not really slowing down in Germany. You know, it's still a guaranteed rate. The return on those solar farms, is not going to be as good as it was when it was 60 cents. But keep in mind, it's still 19 or 20 cents in Germany. And as one of the gentlemen from, I think, California called in, they're doing multiple projects in California with a FIT of 10 cents. In Germany, it's double that. And I think in 2012, Germany will produce more solar new capacity than any year prior. Remember, they're producing equivalent of 10 nuclear power plants of new solar facilities every year. So it's huge. People don't realize the magnitude of this.
And another question, and I think there might be some confusion on terminology, so I wanted to clarify it for myself as well as from Richard. When the FIT becomes lower than the current price of electricity, then will people still install solar? And I wanted to make sure that I was understanding a couple of things. One is that the FIT is paid when you produce more than you consume, but if you still have solar and are just reducing your consumption, at least you're foregoing the having to pay that retail price of electricity. And the second thing was, by your definition of FITs, when you say a 20-cent FIT, are you paid 20 cents a kilowatt hour, or you paid 20 cents on top of the base rate? Because I think in some states, maybe in California, that 10-cent FIT might actually be a bonus that's paid on top of a base rate.
I'm not sure about California, but in Germany it is what you're paid. It's 20 cents. So,
okay. So it's not a bonus on top of the retail rate.
No, and here's another, just to go back to the prior question, which is really important, and that is that in Germany, you get paid for every electron you send the utility. The utility pays you for what you produce. If you decide to shut your system off one day for unknown reasons, you don't get paid. Now, the problem in the U.S. with all this incredibly complex stuff is you're really getting paid for your capacity because you're getting tax credits and subsidies up front. It's a very, very inefficient way to do it, the way it's done in this country. And it also sort of encourages less than honest behavior, which is a bad thing, and it'll only come back and bite the industry. It's really obvious to me. I'll pay you for what you produce, and that's fair. If you don't produce it, I'm not going to pay you. So that's another big advantage, in addition to simplicity and certainty, is the fact that it's logically obvious. You produce it, we'll pay for it.
And that's a great question. Lead into, I think, probably our last question again from Trey. How would you propose that the FIT be incorporated into the rate base for a regulated utility, if this is done one utility or one state at a time? How do you incorporate the FIT into the rate base without enraging consumers? And the quote is in the United States, so U.S. consumers as opposed to European consumers who might value things like global warming and CO2 reduction more than the average U.S. citizen.
Well, keep in mind, first of all, I believe that the American consumer just needs to be educated a bit more. And that's just not a comment on America. Japan, who started this whole solar boom back in the late 80s, was preceded by a huge national PR campaign on education. Same in Germany. When you survey German people, they say, we're willing to pay more than we pay now because we want our environment better, et cetera, et cetera. In the U.S., it's going to be spread across the entire rate base. Okay? As I said in Germany, for a family, an average German family, it increases their monthly bill by about $3.50. So if American ratepayers are going to be enraged over $3.50, then we're probably going to have a problem. But frankly, I don't think people look at their utility bill in any depth at all. $3.50 per month is negligible. It's a dime a day. So I don't really see any huge difference in their bill that's going to cause anybody to morph into rage. I don't think they're even going to notice it. All they'll notice is the benefits, the long-term benefits.
Okay, excellent. Well, we've run out of time, and thank you again for your discussion. If you have additional questions, you can continue to type those into the Q&A. Peter's agreed to go through some of these questions and make sure that we have all the answers documented, and we'll put those online tomorrow. Again, you'll each be receiving an email that has a copy of the slides, of the recording, and also of these questions and answers. And with that, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Principal Solar, and also thank our presenter, Peter Lynch. And Peter, thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thanks, guys, for all, girls and ladies, for all your good questions. And let's all get out there and promote FIT and get people in the United States educated on why this is so good and why they should all do it for themselves and for their families.